People who get locked into a vision. All right, that's it, man. That's their drive. That's their passion. Critics don't matter. This don't matter. They're going to do whatever it fucking takes to be the best at what they do.
This is Dave Tate again with another edition of Table Talk. Today I'm sitting down with Ross Kolodziej. Did I nail it? I nailed it. Yep.
Crushed it.
And we were talking about if I was going to be able to nail the name correct or not. And he's in town because they got a game tomorrow against Ohio State. So I appreciate you taking the time to come out. You know,
thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
It's hard to get you guys, you know, to begin with the schedule that you have. But, you know, I'm thankful because it's 9:00 at night and you're still doing it, man. It's not a lot of people would do that. So I appreciate that. The connection with Ross is he's friends with Chris Jank, who's a Team Elite FTS member, and he played football with Chris. I'll let him talk a little bit about their relationship. But Chris has been with the team for a long time now. He came onto the team after winning the XPC, whatever it was called, powerlifting championships. At the time, I believe Chris was the strongest super heavyweight on the planet, right. You know, I think, you know, and then under unfortunate circumstances he's dealing with genetic heart issues that have kind of spun out of control but are in control. But, you know, it is what it is. He's doing good. Yeah. I mean, he does have his log up on our site, so you can follow that. So he's doing the best that he can do. He's doing good. He's making progress, and hopefully things will start to resolve a little bit better for him after the first of the year. I think January or something like that, things should start to resolve. And the thing with Chris is he's determined to come back and to beat all of his PRs with a heart transplant. So if anything, it's going to be a good story to watch.
Right.
I'm not too sure how all those people around him who care about him think about this, but that will be discussed at a later time. So go ahead and tell me about how you met Chris and your relationship with him.
Chris, or Tank, we go back, came in as freshmen together at Wisconsin and roomed together and hit it off right from the start. You know, very similar mindset in the weight room and on the field, just an attack mentality, you know, love to train, love to get after it. I think very closely matched, at least early on, in terms of weight on the bar, and I think that was great for both of us to push and really iron sharpening iron, right? Just getting that rack every day, and you might not feel it, but I know Chris is going to bring it, and so that kind of helped me elevate my game as a player throughout the course of my career. And then obviously when we left, he had the opportunity to play professionally, played some arena ball. I got drafted by the Giants, spent some time in the NFL, and then obviously his powerlifting career just took off. And, you know, I'm sitting there like, shoot, man, like I used to squat more than this dude, right? And, you know, and so, you know, always picking his brain, training-wise, what are you doing, how you doing it, all those type of things, and have remained great friends ever since. You know, he's a godfather to our second daughter, so just a great human being, great guy. And like I said, got a lot to thank for him just for our time together at Wisconsin and just how we trained and got after it.
Yeah, I forgot to mention at the beginning that Ross is the head strength and conditioning coach at University of Wisconsin. Before that, he was the head strengthening coach at University of Pittsburgh, and before that, he was assistant strength coach
at Pitt, and
then
GA'd interned at Wisconsin.
GA interned in Wisconsin, and then before that, you know, a stint in the NFL, and then was a player at Wisconsin, to where, you know, he kind of fast-tracked through his answer real quick there. We were talking before we came on the air because I was just trying to validate some of the things that I read on the internet, you know, so you always got to question.
Absolute source.
Yeah, you got to question, especially when it comes to strength coaches and so forth, what you see on the internet to make sure it's absolutely true. That one of the articles I saw, you had some records that you held in the University of Wisconsin as a player for, I believe you said the squat.
Clean, you know, squatted on my way out there, squatted 700 pounds, clean 420. You know, I was a 430 bench press guy. 35-inch vert, just under 10-foot broad jump. So, but obviously once you get to the NFL, training changes a little bit, and you come in and it's dependent upon the organization you're in. But at that time, hammer, those rows of hammer machines were big, leg press, certain things like that. So, I'd say my first 2 years in the league didn't even step inside a squat rack. So, but fortunate after that to go some places in the NFL that you could load the bar a little bit.
Now, what position were you?
Defensive line.
Okay, so
D tackle.
D line. One of the questions that gets tossed around a lot and has always been tossed around since I was at Westside with Louis doing consulting with coaches is what is for division. Let's break it down to make it definable. Okay, because a Division I player is obviously going to be different than a Division II player and a Division III player, and somebody that plays for University of Findlay or
Sure.
or even lower, a school that doesn't have any recruiting whatsoever. So let's just keep it at Division I. A 700-pound squat is a lineman. The question that's always been asked is, when is enough enough?
Sure.
Okay, like. We can probably agree that if the lineman can't squat 315 and you get him to squat 500, they're probably going to be better.
Right.
All right. They're going to be faster. They're going to be stronger. They're probably going to be more explosive. All right. 500 to 700. I don't know. Now from 700 to 900, it's probably going to start to work inversely.
Right.
So if you were to kind of be able to define the rules of the perfect lineman, right? Healthy, right? Everything's healthy. Everything's balanced. You're dealing with somebody that's got hand coordination, foot coordination. They're equal on all levels. So there's no giant glaring weak point like lateral ability and stuff like that. What would be the optimal squat?
For me personally, I think whatever is in the capability of that athlete and their mindset and their mentality, 100%. But internally, absolutely. Our standard, right, is a 600-pound squat, 400-pound bench. Okay. And that's what we are asking our athletes at those positions. That's what we're shooting for.
Okay.
As to whether or not there's a point of diminishing returns, we had Aaron Donald at Pitt. AD's a 500-pound bench press. Yeah. And is that why he's the most dominant lineman in the league? I certainly think it has something to do with it. So how much money is enough? Just a little bit more. And I think until you've really reached that true elite total or level in a squat or bench, then I think, like you said, worry about it. But until you're squatting 750, 800 pounds, which most guys are not.
That's right, yeah.
So I think it's somewhat arbitrary to even argue or worry about.
Yeah.
Because I'm not aware of many, if any, college Division I football players squatting over 700 pounds.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's where I would always fall back on that is show me the program that's just knocking out 700-pound squatters left and right.
Right.
Because it doesn't exist. Because,
And I think within, you're talking about college programming, the time you have with these athletes to truly train for the squat, the bench, we fight for 8 weeks coming off the season, right? And as soon as that 8-week cycle's over, you're transitioning right into spring football practice. The rules have changed in the NCAA now where coaches can get a chunk of the time and the hours in your winter program. So even in your last 4 weeks of that 8-week training cycle, you're starting to have competing resources, right? Guys are getting on the field, spending more time on, their position-specific drills, spending meeting time, right? And so you're not even getting a true 8-week training cycle before your spring football. Spring football goes for 5 weeks. You get 2-3 weeks with the guys, and then they go home for summer break, right, which could be 3 to 4 weeks off. Then they come back, you get another 8-week training cycle, a week off, and you're into camp. And so even as a college athlete, right? Like if you're truly just focusing on squat, bench, like you maybe, if you're lucky, you get 16, pure weeks of training. Divided, like split.
Yeah.
Completely split, by months.
Mm-hmm.
So to make those type of gains and to develop that kind of strength is a challenge in its own right.
Most definitely, especially with the competing resources, because you start to, depending on how you're training them, you start to peak them. Now they're on their feet twice as much
right.
as what they were before, and every step is, something else they need to recover from.
Right. There's only so much pie, right?
Yeah.
And how you use it, you have to be very intentional about it. But even, internally as an organization or as a program, you need to have a great plan and how you use that time and what are the important things. Is that if that 600-pound squat is important to you as a position coach, then we need to work towards that intelligently and the best athlete or the best interest of that athlete.
Yeah. But as you just pointed out, you need that position coach to buy in.
100%.
Because they're going to have to dial back.
Right.
For you to be able to do what you need to do. So that's the part that I think when I speak to people, love to criticize D1 strength coaches, by the way. Just you already know this, but
no question.
They don't understand the job, and they don't understand the blocks of training and how they fall, kind of as you just explained. Because I'm not going to say it's an impossible scenario to make somebody stronger in, but it's difficult.
It's very challenging.
It's very difficult. It's very challenging. Even the best block-oriented model still doesn't have, 4 week of deloads,
right?
Thrown in there, and they're not really even deloads. They're just not lifting weight weeks.
Right.
And then when they have rest, it's not even active rest. It's just home,
right,
playing video games.
Well, and they're college kids too, on an exciting campus with a lot going on and a lot to do. So when you're talking about rest, recover, proper hydration and nutrition, you're asking an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid who's kind of thrust into, a world of a lot of opportunities. And so, again, it takes a really mature guy to know when to say when and kind of, get off the streets a little bit at night and make sure he's rested and recovered for that next training session.
But that's a great point that you bring up, because I think that becomes where the difference makers are that are in the positions that you fill. Is if you just take that kid, because you already know you got a non-optimal training environment, but you still have a physique that you have to get to play football. Mm-hmm. And they know how to play football.
Right.
Otherwise, they would not have been
there.
They wouldn't be there. Not where you're at. They would not be there. But if you can educate them and get them to buy in to just eating halfway decently, getting the sleep that they should, staying out of trouble, obviously, which you would think would be obvious, but it's not,
They're young men.
Exactly. They're kids. Yeah. They're right out of high school.
Right.
Independent for the first time.
First time ever.
So your job is more parental, than it is actual being a strength coach.
Well, I think for our staff especially, it helps with, the two guys that were able to join me tonight. They both played at a high level, have been there, done that, so they can relate to the athlete and what they're going through. And so when you say, hey, I was in your shoes, right? That's not false, right? Those are big shoes sitting over there where when you say, maybe dial it back tonight or, water and a beer, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Like, be smart about it. You can still have fun. We're not saying no fun, but, how you enjoy your time, have a plan for that as well. And things that you do differently that you've learned from, here's why.
Yeah. I mean, I'll pose this to those guys as well as yourself. If they made all those good decisions, and they don't, okay, we know that they don't, and it does any school. They don't make all perfect decisions. Right. But if they made all those good decisions and then actually really never even hit the weight room, would they be better players? No. They still need. You would agree? I'm talking all good decisions.
All good decisions.
Nutritionally, hydration.
Results, without question.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you still need to train.
I get that. I get that. I'm just throwing I'm just throwing a scenario out.
If I would, I get what I would say is the nutrition and the sleep, all those things are just as important as what we do in the weight room.
Yes.
They're as equally as important.
Mm-hmm. Because if their position coach, and their defensive or offensive coach, if they're getting battered, right, there's not a whole lot you can really do except recovery wise. And the best recovery is sleep, hydration. Right. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now when they're not getting battered, that's when,
that's when we have to capitalize.
That's when you capitalize. And so you take that. So I'm hoping I'm making this point to the people who are listening is, you have this, maybe that's the wrong word. I'm not going to say it's parental. It's coaching. All right. It's people. Let's define coaching for what it really is. You're making, young athletes men. Okay. So.
Well, and they don't know what they don't know. And that's our job.
Yes.
Our job is to educate, as you've said, teach them, right? And that doesn't mean what great squat form is or technique in a clean or right. That's a piece of it, but it's as much a lifestyle and a commitment to that and understanding your body, how it responds to specific stimulus, and how to make sure you're here to perform, right? Your body is your blade. It's a machine, right? Just like a car. We're going to teach you here's how you tune this thing. So very much education, parental in some ways, as they mature and get older, maybe more sibling like, you hope. You hope you instill the right discipline early on so you reap the benefits down the line. Our program benefited greatly from the culture that Coach Alvarez came in and instilled, and kind of how you go about it. And to be honest, there's not many guys that last, right? Like if you don't adapt to that culture or buy in or have that innately, you're not going to last very long.
Well, that's pretty much a high level culture in any sport, though, right?
No doubt.
It's just it's part of the beast at the high level. If you what's Louis say? If you run with a limp, you're gonna. I don't know what the hell he says, but you get what I'm saying. Is if you have a limp, you'll be lame. Who knows? It's Louis, but you weed them out. You know what I'm saying? They weed themselves out. You don't really weed them out. They just can't handle the environment, and you're giving them every opportunity to be able to do that. To push them up through that. So there's that component that I think gets missed a lot of the times. Then there's the component of the leadership part of getting them to work as a team.
Absolutely.
That I think a lot of fans overlook, a lot of, critics of strength coaches overlook that, I've always said that there's different types of leadership. And as a business owner, I can't really look at what you do and try to emulate your style of leadership in my business, because the fact of the matter is, I got 2 customer service reps out there. All right. So you got 1 in each chair. Now I don't have a chair behind each one of them and then a chair behind each one of them. So I don't have a first team, second team, third team. So I don't have, a second team customer service that's actually just like this, man, like waiting for her to get up to go to the bathroom so they can sit in the first seat to show what they can do. I don't have that. Then I don't have that third team, waiting for, like pushing real hard to be able to do that. Meanwhile, they're working their skills, waiting for this one person to be able to go down. I don't have that. And I can sit here and say, that would be really cool if I did, because then I'd have a high functioning first team. But here's the rub. You have to get them all to play together and want the first guy to do the best job they could possibly do. That's tough. That's
yeah, it's incredibly tough. That's why, there's only one champion, right? There's only one team, ultimate team, that claims the prize, and that's why you do it every year. It's a reboot. And to your point, a lot of that starts in recruiting, and your ability to recruit is really going to be a reflection of who you are as a program. The coaches you have, that's going to be the type of people you're going to attract to your program. Who you're going to allow, who you're going to identify into your organization, business, program, right? Do they meet these standards? And part of what we do as head strength coaches, especially, you work with NFL scouts, and that shouldn't come as a shock to anyone, right? But certainly they're asking you height, weight, bench, all that stuff, but they're going to get a chance to showcase their skills at the combine or pro day, and it's on tape anyways. The most important thing to those guys is what's his character like? How does he work for you? And it's no different within our program, right? Once you get to a certain level, the athletic capabilities, the talent is the constant, right? The differentiator is really the character of the people that you have. What are they willing to put in? How hard are they willing to work? Are they going to push for that extra mile? We're big on a marginal gains approach, right? We're just trying to get 1% better every day in what we're trying to do. We're trying to control the controllables, and within that, you have to understand that there's some things you can't control.
Yes.
And so we're not going to waste any energy chasing after things. You got to let go of some stuff too to get better. And so, but you have to have the people in the room that buy into those concepts. And within that, right, is the main goal is the team. And that may mean you might have a reduced role in this area, but it's going to allow us to be better here. And as a team, that can make you unstoppable. You can have 11 of the best players in the world, but if they can't play together, you're not going to have a very good team. You'll win a few games, right? But you're not going to win them all.
So with the character component, is there anything that you do to specifically build that into the actual training that you're doing? Let's just keep it in the weight room, because there's,
right.
You have rubber and turf.
Right.
So let's just keep it rubber, kind of make it easy. But in the weight room, is there anything that I don't want to give away trade secrets if you had I don't think there are any trade secrets,
right.
But anything specifically that you try to do to help develop the character?
Well, trade secrets. At the end of the day, 45-pound plate weighs the same here as it does in Madison, Wisconsin. 100 yards is 100 yards. Now, how you choose to use that, that's up to you, and try and find your competitive advantage within that. How we try to work and develop our leadership within our program, when we start the winter conditioning phase, we're big on selecting captains, and those captains then draft a team. And to me, what I love about that is that's in front of your peers, right? And so you're going to be drafted based upon everything. We're going to have a competition, and there's going to be athletic, your bench, your squat, your clean. We'll track any exercise we can possibly do in the weight room, and we're going to make it competitive, and there's going to be a winner, there'll be a loser. We're also going to track your academics. We're going to track your attendance at training table, your attendance at class, your GPA. All these things we mash up into kind of our, formula, if you will, that's going to generate a number and determine a winner. And so when you get drafted by those captains, right, that's a very clear ranking of your peers where you sit. And so for a lot of guys, it can be a great boost in confidence, and a lot of guys can look there and say, shoot, man, these guys really value this guy. Why, right? Or if you start sliding down that list, right, and you think, we have some very talented guys that have slipped low because what total value do you add to the program, right? You might be great on 30 plays, but the 1-2 plays, you could cost us a game. And thankfully, we have the right type of guys that value that type of mindset, right? And that's how they kind of operate from. And so that allows us to, foster that type of leadership. We put a lot on our guys and their teams, and we'll say, hey, the workout's this, this, this. It's on you to coach your guys and execute these drills, right? And that's usually our Friday type deal. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, we're pretty hands-on as coaches and doing, what we do. But for Fridays, that's us. We put together the drills, we put together the competitions and seed it, but it's like a game, right? You coach them up all week. Friday's game day. Here you go. You go inside the white lines. No coach can step out there with you. It's on you to figure out, as a team, how to execute and get it done.
I assume the Fridays you're speaking off season.
Off season, yeah.
Yeah, because
not today.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's not happening during the season. So they're taking ownership on multiple ways, with that.
In every way we can think of, absolutely.
So that's a big part of the character development, is to give the players the ownership. But what about the player that was picked last?
Right, and that's a kind of a coming to Jesus moment for that individual, right? And some of those situations, the kid will end up in my office. Usually it's the captain of that team or guys on that team saying, hey, here's why. And I think there's great power in that, because it's not just a coach, right, getting on his ass about X, Y, Z, right? It's truly the guy's locker next to you being like, hey, buddy, like, you are a real dick, or this does matter. And so to me, there's a book, you win the locker room first, right? But that truly is the locker room. We're going to be as good as our locker room is. And, again, just like your children, right? You raise them up, but at some point they leave the house and they're going to have to stand on their own. And so, as we talked earlier about the parental piece, right? When you're working with these athletes, you can't be a helicopter coach either, right? You're going to have to put them in positions where that's going to have to be worked out. They're going to have to figure it out, because ultimately that's what Saturday is. They're going to have to figure it out, how to work together. That play call comes in. They come out in a formation that they haven't seen before, right? What are we going to do? We're going to burn all our timeouts every time they show us something we haven't seen before?
Okay, so trying to figure out how to hit this next one here.
I better take a drink of water.
Yeah, the character. Okay, how does that then play out in the actual weight room? So you got the power racks, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, well, let's step back a little bit. What would you call your core lifts that are part of your program? You already said the squat. You already said
the core, the big three.
Your big lifts
are power clean, squat, bench.
So everything that you do then is it based on the rubber? Everything that you do on the rubber, is it based upon making those three better? Would you define it that way?
I would define how our performance, or my performance, is judged on those three in the winter training phase.
Okay.
So that's
the biggest phase.
Right. So in those phases, right, relative to the position coaches, probably select administrators, right, the squat, clean, and bench, our improvements in all those areas, positionally, individually, team-wise, right, that will be how we are judged.
Okay. But it's what I'm asking, is that how the program's put together?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because
you can't build everything.
No question.
Cool.
Right.
Okay. We're on the same page. Because one of the things that I do when I'll consult with coaches is trying to help them figure out what their training philosophy is.
Right.
And every coach's philosophy, given that they have a decade more training themselves or other people, they have a philosophy. They just don't know what it is yet. Right. And one of the first questions I ask is, what exercises do you feel have the highest dynamic correspondence to the player on the field?
Right.
And usually any coach that's been around for over a decade has three to five.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll ask, well, what do you do to build those? And then it's like, like it goes silent. But you have an opportunity in that 8-week period, which is kind of getting chopped away, by the way, just to let you know. But you have that had that opportunity in that 8-week period, which is slowly going away.
Slowly
eroding. Yeah. But anyhow, it's still there. But the lifts that you're talking about, it's not like they're not overly taxing. Okay, so you had, what was it, the squat,
clean and bench.
So the clean and bench they're not overly, the squat's taxing, most definitely. The bench and the clean, they're not overly taxing for a Division I football player who's maybe at best 6 years experience training with weights, at best, usually less,
Yes.
So a beginner in the weight room.
Most
so
are.
Not that bad. So even with what the position coach is doing, they're still going to be able to progress because, don't take this the wrong way, because they suck so bad in the weight room.
No question. That first year of gains is strictly, nervous system and just them, squatting for the first time, right? Or
and
cleaning for the first time, or, truly benching. I mean, we've had guys literally that have played 8-man football and their weight room was a converted, janitorial closet, right? And so those are the guys absolutely. You put 100 pounds on a squat, and it's like, well, he couldn't even squat when he got here.
And he wasn't. The way I'll explain it, he wasn't able to display his strength effectively through that movement.
Right.
So he already was able to lift that. He just didn't have the technique for him to do that. But that's what the first year's for, to kind of help kind of solidify that, put that in there. And then the rest of it is to develop that during that, let's just call it a block, that 8-week block. So you're using that to kind of judge how your strength success is, so that would be your strength block. Now let's move into the next block, which would be spring practice, and that's a short one, right?
4 to 5 weeks for our guys.
Too bad. So what is that emphasis there still on those movements, or do you pivot?
There's variations of, we might do more pulls versus cleans, just because guys elbows, wrists, shoulders, and trying to take that weight. Same thing with the bench, the big guys, right? Maybe more 3-board, change the range of motion, dumbbells, vary the reps and set schemes, stuff like that. Same thing on the squats. We might do, maybe more unilateral work. We do a chain cycle just to change it up and kind of keep guys engaged as you work through some of that general soreness of practice.
So easier to recover block is kind of what it is.
A little. I mean, it's the way we do it is we will split it up in probably about 5 different groups. So we're tracking the reps of our players, practice RPEs, and that really is going to drive the programming in any of the football specific phases. So there's going to be a group of guys that they're practicing, but they're not really practicing. So we're not going to, change the intensity or volume a whole lot for those guys because they're not really doing anything. But, your big dogs up front that are, playing 70 snaps a game, that are grinding it out, that's the group that you really got to be, in tune with in terms of where they're at and be willing to, make changes on the fly.
Okay. So we got that spring, and then after that, what block comes? Your summer? They're gone?
Well, it'd be a pretty open transition window of 3 to 4 weeks where a handful of guys might stay, but most go back home. We give them a program. We've done a pretty good job over the years. Things that have gone away, conditioning tests have gone away. So we use the conditioning test to start the summer program rather than finish it. They should be in condition at the end of your summer program. So we would use that as some incentive to train. And I would say for the most part, probably 80% of the guys, when they come back, they're ready to go. There's that 20% group that you can tell sat on a couch. But for the most part, again, we feel like we have the right guys. They do the necessary things to come back because they value, again, getting back to that education piece, when you teach them your body and how quick you can detrain and, 5-6 days, right? The cells in your muscles start to change, and ATP and muscle glycogen, all that good stuff, right? And so they're into it. And so they comprehend, right? Like if we're trying to win a championship in December, it matters what we do in May.
Yes. All right. Then from there, now they're back for
an 8-week summer training block.
Yes. So that is probably where you have the most challenging time.
It can be at times. The first 4 weeks, heavy coach involvement on the field work. Guys have jobs, guys have internships, right? So there's all these things pulling these guys. And
is this also when the new guys come in?
This is also when the freshmen report.
Okay.
Right? So you have a whole new 25, 35 guys coming in the building. So there's a lot going on in June.
Mm-hmm. So what is the training through that phase? Is it just trying to maintain whatever they have and let the coach?
I feel like this was our best year yet in terms of working with the staff and trying to educate them on training and what we're trying to do within the weight room. And so we're trying to peak for the season. So our expectations for that group was them to execute the program in May. So when we come back in June, we can be in a position, we have the work capacity, we have the strength to continue on in this block.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, if we come in, you're going to get crushed in week 1, week 2, right?
Yeah. It's when I work with the lifters that I work with, after a meet, I don't want to call it a deload. I like to call things reloads.
Yeah.
It's just a different term. I don't like to have a bar because they're power lifters.
Yeah.
So their bars are their life. I don't like to have a bar on their spine or in their hands, depending upon, if they're an advanced lifter for 8 weeks, because all the fractions from squatting and the cervical compression from the benching adds up when they're training for a meet, especially somebody as strong as Chris. He'd be an example of somebody that after the meet, I'd say, look, dude, no bars in your hand, no bars on your back for 8 weeks. Every exercise you do has to be repetitions of 8 to 12 and knock yourself out. And he's going to say, well, what the fuck can I do? I'm like, well, look around your gym. You got machines, you got leg extensions, you got lunges. You can train every body part however you want. You just can't put a bar on your back, because I want all those fractures to heal. But when they start getting ready for a meet, say it's 12 weeks, I have to decide, is it 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks? That decision's based upon a starting line. I call it the starting line. You got to be ready. You got to be at the starting line to be able to start, or we're never going to get there.
Sure.
So that's what when they report back, that's what you're basically telling them is you need to be at this starting line, right? So we can push. And if you're not, look, that's okay, but you're going to fall behind and it's going to be really fucking hard and you may never catch up.
Yeah.
At least for the power lifter, they may never catch up. It may just be a bad meet. This may be a kid that might not start. You know what I'm saying? Because he screwed off all summer long. But that starting line becomes, it's not the highest point, but it's the point that you can start to build from, which that leads into the season. So you want to, obviously you're trying to peak for the season. Then during the season, with the guys that are on the field, the players,
right?
Okay, there's the other, the other
developmental group.
Yeah, there's a developmental group. Even that though, I got a question with that because you never know when somebody's going to get pulled up.
Yeah.
So do you make any changes, with that in mind, or you just say, you know what, we're still going to keep them on X program to get them strong?
We do, but then every Sunday coming out of our staff meeting, right, there's the debrief and the plan for the week ahead. And usually by Sunday night, you have a pretty good idea of who they're going to try and start heating up for either that week or the coming weeks. And then we'll use that to drive the programming for that guy. So we'll be pulling guys in and out. For the most part, we still use cards. I try and keep the cards looking the same so nobody's looking at somebody else's card and being like, well, what the hell's this, right? Why is this guy doing that? And so we do. There's probably about 4 or 5 different programs right now, right, within the team, just in terms of practice volume, game volume, or what we may anticipate. Now, in some of those cases, we want to make sure they're ready to step into, right, playing mode and they're ready to handle that game volume and intensity. So, there's guys, again, that are traveling, right, but they're playing 15 snaps. So we're going to ask a lot more of that guy than our starter.
Yeah. I mean, well, you can always have your starter just drop,
Right.
Torn Achilles, he's done. You don't want to have a dude that can't play because his legs are too sore from squatting the day before.
Right. Yeah. So we'll even the way we program the week, we try to make sure, the last day they might squat would be a Wednesday or a Thursday for some of those guys on a home game. That now the rules have changed again. You have 4 opportunities for some of these guys to play. So, that kind of happened to us the first year where we squatted on a Friday the day before the game, and late in the game, all of a sudden it's like, hey, let's throw so-and-so in. And it's like, well, that'd have been great to know, yesterday.
Yeah. So that falls under those things that are not within your real control.
Right.
I mean, it would be great for you to know, but you still got to execute and do what you're supposed to do. So now that's pretty much covered the whole season. So the season's over. Hopefully the season's extends beyond.
Right. Absolutely.
It goes further.
Into January.
Yeah, into January, which it's great, but programming it's another bitch.
Right.
Well, you got weird time a month before bowl games, right?
Right.
From end of season, so that's weird. Because do they go home?
No, because our guys are in class right until December 22nd, somewhere in that range. So typically, right, they might have 2 or 3 days off, if you will, from the end of finals before you're departing for a bowl game or something along those lines. So again, from the end of the season or the conference championship game, you have 15 practices. So again, you're working that in, and then we're trying to get back in the weight room a little bit with a lot of those guys as well.
Something's humming.
Yeah, that's Owen's car.
What's that?
That's Owen's car.
Oh, okay. I'm like, something's going on with the headphones at some dude's car up front. All right, so that kind of brings it full circle from the training standpoint. How much do you have full control over the turf? The speed, or is that another coach that's working with you
in the off season?
Yes,
we can. We work together, but we program and run all facets of the program.
Are there any of those strength phases where you're pulling back the turf work, the speed work?
Yes, as we, some things we're doing in season, depending on what we're trying to do in blocks in the off season, we will waive, right? What are we trying to emphasize and what is most important? Whatever is most important, that's where we're going to focus our time and energy, and then we will choose the weight room work to support that. Or if it's a speed day, the weight room will reflect what we're trying to do on the field, and vice versa. If it's a high emphasis in the weight room, what we do on the field, if anything that day would be reflected based on what we were trying to get done in the weight room.
All right, so if I'm understanding you correctly, if it's more, short burst speed, 10-yard, under 20-yard type speed, the weight room work's going to be more dynamic oriented.
Yeah.
Where if it's more, sled type of crap, strongman stuff, or anything like that you're doing on the turf, in the weight room's going to be more heavy straight type stuff. So it
in our linear,
it corresponds.
Right. In our speed work, that's always going to take precedence. So on those days, we would always start on the turf first, right?
Yes,
we want their nervous system primed and ready to go for what we're trying to work on, and that's what we want those qualities to be, at their highest point of being able to develop.
And then do you program their restoration? I'm sure like any other school you have.
Yes, we're on the
everything.
Clock. Who's ever running it that day, right? If the rest ratio is 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is, you're setting the tempo for that workout.
No, I'm talking, the say hot tub.
Oh,
passive restoration.
Sure.
Is that programmed?
So we'll have, typically we'll have 5 or 6 things programmed, and we'll say choose 2, choose 3, whether that's hot cold contrast, whether that's a float tank, Normatex, The training room's got, dry needling, you name it, right? And so we asked those guys to try and get at least 2 of the 5 or 6 modalities done.
Does that count towards your
Points.
hours?
No,
That's cool.
that's on them.
Okay, that's on them. So that's a good thing because
Right.
it doesn't pull from your training hours.
Right.
I think it was last summer or last year, the NCAA is starting to mess with you guys a little bit more. Has that kind of gone full circle to where they've implemented whatever they are going to implement? I've kind of lost touch with it, but I know they were stepping in because of the number of rhabdo and
Right.
stuff like that they were going to have more oversight.
Right. The main issue was Maryland. I lost these headphones here.
Yeah, they cut in and out a little bit.
All right.
Sorry about that.
So, which, as it should be, right? Player passes away. It should, there should be oversight as to why that happened and to make sure something like that never happens again. A couple of the main things that came away was no longer any physical punishment, right? You can't use the Stairmaster or a Prowler or anything like that as a deterrent to being late or not attending class or you name it. Another big one, I guess, would be any break longer than 7 days when they report back. You can't have them, longer than a period of time or any back, 2 sessions. Like you couldn't squat in the morning and run in the evening, or in training camp, you couldn't practice in the morning and have a walkthrough in the evening or a lift in the evening. So those are some of the things that affect, any type of transition window have kind of been the biggest ones.
So it really wasn't as bad as what a lot of coaches thought it was going to end up being. I mean, it needed to be done. We all agree with that. Like something, there needed to be some kind of oversight, but there was a lot of paranoia
Sure.
from guys that I was talking to, like, oh, they're going to come in and it's going to be ridiculous oversight. And
Well, you don't know, right? And the way things are worded and and if
Okay.
you read the document, right, it's like a 25-page document. So initially,
you have no
it's
clue.
like, whoa, what's within this document? A couple of the other things that they are recommending is kind of this separation of church and state, right? Taking as they're calling it, kind of the head football strength coach and the head football coach axis, and trying to break that up. So that could be a pretty big deal for some programs.
No, that's a huge deal.
Right. The oversight of who I would report to, or who we'd report to as a strength staff. They're looking at a model that, could be sports medicine. It could be a strength and conditioning professional, right? That would be the one that has oversight over your department. So that could certainly change the way that you would go about your business, depending upon.
What could have oversight upon your hiring?
Well,
Who the coach is going to have working for them,
certainly.
which is, I can say whatever I want because I'm not involved, which is a scary thing because you see the players more than any other coach does. So the coach should have some, I would
Say.
think, should have a lot of say
Yeah.
in who's going to be with his recruited players more than any other person, which that one seems really weird to me. I kind of get, though, if they put it under a medical person, then it's kind of liability protecting their own ass. But
Yeah. Well,
either way,
there's also documentation, right? So we've been using an app to track all the workouts and make sure that sports medicine knows what we're doing for the week ahead, right? Because there's also a paragraph in there about deviations from any programming, right? So they want they want to see your 8-week training block and what's your progression and why you're doing what you're doing, right? And what they're trying to eliminate is any type of reactionary, right, activities, right? So if Friday was this, but a bunch of guys missed class and now you're running 300-yard shuttles, right? That individual would intercede and say, no, this is what you had programmed. This is what you're going to do.
So that's taking the auto regulation. Oh, shit. Okay, this is getting interesting. So, and this is all in play now, or it's still being discussed?
The things that are already in play now are the no punitive exercises.
That's
the transition windows is in play now.
Mm-hmm.
How they're kind of leaving it up to each program to determine how they want to structure. Those are recommendations. In the current state of things.
Okay. So it's all going to come down to the AD.
The AD, the head football coach, those type of things. Because you're absolutely right. I mean, it's not just going to impact the head coach and the guy that gets to work. It's going to impact the universities and what head coach they can hire. Because as a head coach, you're going to want to know the situation that the job you're taking. Who can you hire? And if there's a job open, there's guys out there that'll turn down a job specifically if they can't bring certain people with them.
Yes. That makes, especially if it's, well, I don't know. I mean, is the landscape pretty much the same now? I mean, before this, is the landscape pretty much the same amongst most Division I universities?
There hasn't been any change that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So nothing has changed. Again, those were recommendations.
Yeah. But I'm saying before these recommendations came out, is the landscape kind of the same with each school? Like the coach can bring the strength coach,
yes,
and they can do so. It's not like this school here, the coach can't do this, or this, where they can here. It's all, everything's negotiable at this point,
right?
Or before this, where this could actually make things non-negotiable, because University X, this is their recommended policy,
right,
provided from the NCAA.
Right.
So coach says, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go. This going to become a very interesting story to watch unfold.
Sure. Absolutely.
Because, paranoid schools are going to, I don't know. It's going to be interesting, because you can't tell me that. I don't want to say shit. I can say it. You can. You can't tell me that the heads of all these schools are not communicating with each other,
right? Because
they're all going to be bidding for the same. If they need a coach,
right,
they're all going to be going after the same type. Well, not the same coach, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
They're all going to want to have the same advantage as far as recruiting the best coach that they can that the next guy has. Nobody wants to actually put in a disadvantage.
Or a perceived disadvantage, right?
Yeah, yes, a perceived. Exactly. Okay. With the kids that you see coming in, recommendations for high school strength coaches, what can they do better to be able to send the kids to you? Now, they're not going to be able to send the kids to you, so they're going to be at the starting gate like we talked about. But what can they do better to have the kids better prepared to excel in your program? And this would be any D1 program.
I think overall, reduce specialization, number one. Try and have your athletes in different sports, right? The biggest things we see, right, that we would advise would be, don't worry about clean or trying to get extra complicated. Keep it simple, right? If you can just teach them how to squat well, how to hinge well, some single leg work would be great. but it's not overly complicated would be my number one thing. Pick out a couple movements that you want to teach and teach well and focus on those. Programming wise, it doesn't have to be anything crazy or super sexy, right? I mean, just some simple progressive overload training for those kids. And that's really about it. Some general work capacity. And then as it relates to their skill development in the sport, let that take over when it's time to focus on that in those sports. But in your off season, just keep it general prep, and really mobility and how to build those patterns and lay a good foundation first.
If I got an indirect way to try to get to this point that I want to make. So I'm not sure if this is going to work. It may backfire on me. If somebody was to really do a deep dive, online, say they wanted to figure out what kind of training program that you actually use, would they be able to find it? Is there a player somewhere that has uploaded an off-season manual that's on some rapid download crap thing somewhere?
I don't think there is, but there's nothing super secret about it. I mean, it's
okay. Because that was my point. Is I don't think there's anything super secret about anybody's program, but at the same time, I don't want to say, "Hey, you send him an email; he'll send you the program," because you get a million emails. But there's nothing really super secret about it. But what I see happen is once a year, it's not just you guys. It might be you guys. I don't know. I don't pay any attention to them. I quit watching them a long time ago. The weight room recruiting videos, that come out. I laugh at them, but I don't pay attention to them because they're not a true representation of what's actually going on with the program. But every year there's always one. Some strength coach gets caught for a minute doing something that looks really stupid, and then it goes viral. And then everybody's like, man, that guy sucks. That guy sucks. That guy sucks. And this 1 minute period could have just be fucking off.
Yeah.
It's just, hey, let's give the players a break and just, go fuck off and do this and have fun. So that's all about, you know what I'm saying? But then it gets taken out of context.
Without question.
I think that's what happens with a lot of I call them recruitment videos.
Sure.
They're pushing the prowler and they're busting ass and you got music in the background and it's all hardcore. And, you got one guy squatting and nobody spotting, but 20 players behind all screaming. And, it's all, I don't want to say it's all staged, but it's not a true representation of what it is.
Right.
And the reason I quit watching them is because I got sick and tired of people saying, man, do you see this? And they'll send it to me. Like, man, their program sucks. I'm like, dude, man, this is like a minute and a half video on actually, it's not even that. It's Instagram. It's like a minute video on Instagram.
Yeah.
And you're judging this based upon something that they put out.
Well, and I would stop you there and say none of us as strength coaches, at least at Wisconsin, put that out.
Yeah.
Right. That's your media department that'll come down and shoot a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And then
you don't have the time to do it anyhow.
And then they put together this is what we did this week, or this is what we did this training block. Right.
Yeah.
And they're the ones sitting there. Oh, this clip looks great. This guy looks right. That's how those things end up. Nobody's sitting there with a technical eye saying, don't show that. Right. Like there's been a couple times where our guys have put, please, if you're going to do this, at least let one of us watch it before you put it out there. Because, again, it is not an accurate representation
no, it's not
at
even
all.
Close.
And it's I would bet at every other program, it's not being produced by the strength staff.
I would probably guarantee that. I mean, they're just trying to make like a Rocky montage.
They're just trying to produce content.
Yes, and I get what that is, but the only reason I'm kind of stating it is for the listeners to understand exactly what you just said. This is something that the media department's putting together with spliced footage that's coming from probably multiple training sessions.
Yes.
And, or, a training session that's not even a session. It's just, a break, just go do this. And, that's what happens, when you're under the media's eye, and your own media, you would think would, have a little bit more courtesy, if they're if you're, I'm not gonna say that, but if you're Wisconsin media, you might want to run your shit past the coaches. But I don't watch them, so I can't say if yours was good, bad, or if it even happened. I don't even know, because I don't watch them. It's not, I've seen the ones from, like, last year. I saw the ones from Ohio State, and I'm like, oh my God, man, they're pushing the Prowler a lot. And I'm like, well, stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. I'm just saying that because we sell the Prowler. They probably haven't pushed it all year long. It was just one, shoot. But the listener, I keep wanting to say readers, the listeners should know that if you really, I think, if I really cared enough and wanted to do a deep dive and to figure out what your program really looked like, I could dig around enough to be able to find at least one block, put somewhere to be able to see. And you probably could do that with probably any school. I mean, actually it's funny because before the internet was the internet, most strength coaches had everybody else's training log.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, there's stacks,
I have a whole file on my computer from the 68 Chargers, right?
Yeah.
79 Dallas Cowboys to, 98 UCLA, PDFs.
Yeah. I had paper versions. I used to have at least 30, and they weren't that much different, it's the execution that I think people need to pay attention to. If you are a strength coach and you want to be a better strength coach, you got to learn how to communicate, learn how to get your team get your players to play as a team and execute. That's
what it comes down to.
I mean, execute is, I'll throw it on you. I mean, execute would be the most important thing, correct? It's just you have to do the things necessary to make that happen.
If you're 11 out execute their 11, you'll win the game.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to, right? And there's many ways you can execute. You can execute, right, by just sheer domination if they're completely overmatched. But again, at this level, you're not just going to show up and steamroll anyone, right? It's usually the team that makes the least amount of mistakes is the team that wins the game. And so, again, going back to your original question about, what point is enough, right? And within all of that, we are always trying to push them to be bigger, faster, stronger. But the most important part is them being able to get out there and execute what we're trying to accomplish and play together as the best team.
Mm-hmm. With the end goal being the Big Ten championships, I would assume.
The Big Ten championship, you win the Big Ten championship, you're going to be in the playoff.
Yeah.
So if you win the Big Ten, without question, that's going to put you in position for every goal you have set.
Okay. Do we have did anybody fire in a question through YouTube?
Let me see. Somebody asked where the 33rd table talk with Brian is. But
there's right now.
There's a couple on our Instagram. Some of them actually came from Janik himself. So one of them was, this is for Ross here, who are the strongest athletes you've trained in your strength and conditioning career?
Well, referenced Aaron Donald earlier, and he is obviously
he's a strong fellow. He
is a strong and great football player. The guy we have running the ball tomorrow, Jonathan Taylor, he's 221, 222 pounds. He's clean 350, squatted 605, and runs 23 miles an hour. He'll run a 4.3 probably on a slow day. And so, exceptional athlete.
Wow.
Okay. Why use lifting belts in a training program for athletes?
Well, for probably 90% of what we do, we probably wouldn't use a lifting belt. Only at loads, near maximal loads, will we really even let our guys bring the belts out.
Okay. You may have already covered this. I apologize if you did, but why are deadlifts frowned upon in a collegiate setting? I think I heard you guys talking about that at the beginning, but that's our last question, so I figured I'd ask.
All right. I wouldn't say they're so much frowned upon. I think, one, to unpack that question, you have to at least acknowledge within the general public there's a perception around the movement that you're going to hurt yourself, right? You're going to shoot your eye out, kid. And so most people have never been taught how to properly execute the lift. So I think there's some fear within that. As a professional, again, if a guy tweaks his back squatting, most coaches or administrators will be like, oh, they're squatting. If you're deadlifting, the perception is then on you as a coach. Well, what the hell are you doing with those guys? And so I think that's where some coaches are a little bit reluctant to put the movement within their program, or at least train at a certain intensity. We deadlift, we use the hex or trap bar to do it. But we still highly value that movement, and it's within our program. So we do deadlift. Now, if you want to argue the semantics of the bar, so be it. But we do deadlift.
Okay. Last thing that came through the live chat is somebody said, general motivational speech, please.
General motivational speech.
So you don't have to. But
at midnight, what do you need a motivational speech for? Let's go, man. Let's talk. More work.
There you go.
There you go.
How does your freshman athlete training vary from your upperclassmen, if at all?
It varies significantly, and within that group, it varies tremendously. We have guys that come in that have tremendous nervous systems, great base, work capacity and strength, and you have guys that honestly have never been in a weight room before. And so you're trying to develop those guys and get them all ready for training camp. Some years you might only have 5 or 6 weeks to get that group ready to handle the stresses of camp. So I think you have to be selective and smart and how you program and who you bring along, at what rates, but ultimately they got to be ready for camp. And so, that's what I love about the job, is that challenge of making all those pieces to that puzzle come together.
When the freshmen come in, do you keep them separate for a given period of time before they're integrated?
We do. Absolutely. Okay. We try to keep them separate at least for the first half. If we have an 8-week block, we'll try and keep them completely separate for the first 4. And then for the next 2 weeks, we'll put them in on those Fridays. And then those last 2 weeks, try and get them in the mix a little bit more. But ideally, you'd love to be able to keep them separate as long as possible and just teach.
Yeah, it's a big change.
It's
huge.
Huge change.
They're going from some of them an unstructured environment to
what
some could consider over-structured environment. So that's huge.
Yeah, it's a great challenge, but again, that's what you got to love about the profession is the opportunity to teach and mentor these guys and really help them develop over that 3 to 5 year window.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, question-wise.
That's it. We're done. Wrapped up.
Unless there's anything, Ross, you wanted to add? Or
I'm good, man. I've already spoke more than I speak. So.
Well, good luck tomorrow. We're definitely rooting for
Thank
Wisconsin.
You. Appreciate it.
All of us here are. Right, Dave?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I am.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Let's just put it this way. I hope the best team wins.
There you go.
So that's the best I can do, because they're going to end up in the playoffs.